All right. Now, this is my third time up here. The first time, I went for 35 minutes, right? I thought, okay, a bit long, but I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. But I've got this terrible fear that I'll prepare something and then talk, and then after 5 minutes, I'll just be out of ideas, right? So the second time went for 52 minutes, right? Now, you probably don't remember a word I said. All you remember is just sitting there thinking, man, I'm busting for a wee, aren't I? I'm like, is this guy ever going to stop talking? Right? Kids' church probably ran out of content. Like, are these parents ever coming back? So anyway, sorry about that. We'll keep it much shorter today, okay? All right. So, right. Now, we're going to establish a principle mainly from the life of Jesus. You know, Jesus, maybe you've heard of him, all right? And then I'm going to give a couple of real life examples of that principle in action. Easy, quick, punchy, right? Punchy but effective. All right, so the principle we're going to establish today, we're called We Be Faithful and the Outcome is on God, okay? So what I'm going to try and show is that God gives each of us things to do, right? And this is in every area of our lives. This is in church, it's in our works, in our families, it's in whatever God's given you to do, wherever he's placed you. The size and the scale of that enterprise is not that important from God's perspective. He's given you something to do. Some people he's given a lot, some people he's given a little, and from God's perspective, that doesn't really matter, right? Because our job is to take the opportunities we have and with diligence and faithfulness and wisdom do our best, and the result or the fruit of it is on God. Okay? So, we do the work, right? We use a bit of wisdom, we use a bit of strategy, we do the best we can, right? That's our bit. The result, entirely on God, not us, right? Okay. Now, I did say this applies to every area of our life, but the examples I got later are all from church life. So, but I don't know. We're in a church, so whatever. It's very apt. Okay, give us our first verse. Okay, they're pretty much all Jesus today. So Matthew 9, 35 to 38. All right, Jesus went through all the towns and the villages, teaching in the synagogues. All right, so this is fairly early on in Jesus' ministry. He saw the crowds, he had compassion of them. From verse 37. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Okay? So what's happening here is Jesus has trained his disciples a bit and he's sending them out. Right? He's saying, all right, you go and tell everyone about me, go into all the villages, etc. Off you go. All right? And the next chapter, he goes at length into what they'll experience, and it's mainly that they're going to be rejected and probably arrested, right? So, however, for our purposes, he's sending out the workers, okay? They do the job, right? So what's required of the workers here? They go out and do the work. Oh, by the way, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out more workers. So pray for more workers always, right? But who's in charge of the harvest? It's not the disciples of the harvest or the workers of the harvest. It's the Lord of the harvest. And the last three words there, into his harvest field, right? He is the one who brings the results, not the people doing the work. Okay. All right, next one. All right, Matthew 13:31. Jesus again, he told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. Though it's the smallest of all the seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches. All right, easy one here. God works with the little things. He starts with the little things. It doesn't matter whether it's a huge thing we're doing or a little thing we're doing. We're not necessarily concerned with the size or the scale. God can easily and quickly, if he wants, turn a little into a lot. Right? Okay. Next. Oh, we're going at a good clip here. This is great. We'll be out before lunch. All right. Luke 16:10. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with very little. See the theme going on here, isn't there? Right? Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever here is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. Now, this one is specifically about money. And there's the parable of the talents, pretty much makes the same point, but it's longer. And we're going for brevity today, aren't we? We're keeping it short. All right? So again, God doesn't really care if you got a little or a lot, only if you can be trusted with it. That's the important part. Like, remember the story of the widow's mite, right? That's where they're in the temple. This is like, it wasn't even a parable. It actually happened in front of Jesus. All the big shots, bringing in all their cash, making a big deal about it, wanting to get noticed. A widow brings in a tiny little offering. It's called a mite. And Jesus says hers was more valuable because she gave everything she could. Now, look, at Restore, we do accept all cash donations, okay? It is a bit hard to make a fuss about your offering these days, because what are you going to do? You'll wave your receipt from the app, right? It's just not possible. All right. However, the point is, it's not the size, but it's the heart, right? It's not about the quantity or anything like that. It's about the heart. All right, last one, Acts 1:15. All right, simple one here. In those days, Peter stood up among the believers, a group numbering about 120. Okay, Jesus has been with them for 3 years. He's had crowds of thousands and thousands, like preaching to them, people hanging off his every word, and not everyone had come out to see him. He was just pretty much the most popular guy going. Everybody wanted a piece of him. He's died, he's risen, he's gone again. There's 120 left. That's it, right? If I'm there, I'm thinking, this is a sinking ship, right? This is going down. This used to be an enormous ministry, and now what have we got? We got 120. Ugh, please. Where is this going? This is going nowhere, right? But hey, God doesn't care about the numbers, because what did he do with that 120? Turned it into everything. So it turned it into us today. That's our legacy, right? So again, the numbers don't matter. All right. So to summarize, right? Yeah. It's not the end. It's not the end. Oh, plenty to go. Don't worry. All right. So we be faithful. We have as big an impact as we can, right? We don't be lazy about it. We use strategy. We don't be dumb about it. We use wisdom, right? You don't put a church service on Tuesday morning or whatever. You put it on Sunday when people are available. You be strategic around stuff, right? But the size and scale is largely irrelevant, right? And the result is entirely on the Lord of the harvest, right? Faithfulness and obedience is what he's looking for, not the results. 120 left. That was it. Right? Now, if we're faithful, if we're diligent, will our little turn into much? Yeah, probably. Probably will, right? Because if you can be trusted with little, God says, I'll give you much. But that's really not the point or necessarily the goal, right? Like, it's just a nice little bonus. We're faithful, God sees that, and he rewards it, but that's the icing on the cake. We've got to be faithful no matter what, and know that he's working. He's doing his thing while we do our thing, all right? So what's in front of you? Big, small, medium, public, private, doesn't matter. God looks at the hearts and the results are on him. Okay. I mean, even for us here, right? Our church, we're not tiny, right? But we're not gigantic. And there's ebbs and flows in numbers, Like Mark said, there were 3 of us at the beginning, and now sometimes it ebbs and flows within minutes, right? But week to week, there's ebbs and flows. We strategize and we plan, and God cares that we're being faithful, and as a church and as an individual within it. Are you being faithful with what you've got? And we'll do our best. But in the end, and I just find this takes a lot of pressure off in a lot of areas of life. It's God who does the harvest. It's on him. It's not on us. All right? Okay. So, we've established that. Well established? Okay, good. All right, here's a couple of examples. Now, they're from church life. Now, when I was maybe about 10, right, I was in a small suburban church, right? This is where my family went. We went every Sunday. Now, every Sunday, there was a Sunday school, right? A bit like we have here. So, except the difference between there and here is almost all the leaders at this one, they were much older women, right? I don't know where the men were, but they were all these older women. I can't even remember their names. Like it was probably Doris, right? Probably Doris, because when I was a kid, pretty much every old lady I knew was called Doris. I don't know. There was maybe like a Beth or a Joyce in there, but they were largely called Doris, right? Now, look, I'm not having a go at the name Doris, by the way. It's a lovely name. And if that's more likely if it's like your grandmother's name or something, right? Then it's a top name. My great-grandmother was called Doris, right? There's just a lot of them. There's a lot of them, right, of that vintage, right? I mean, my generation's no better. Like, mine's no better, right? When I was at school, there were 30 boys in my year, 4 Andrews, 3 Stephens, right? It happens every generation. Or maybe not the current one, actually. There's a lot of weird names these days, isn't there? I mean my kids are the worst. It starts with them. But even here, we've got what do we got? We've got Aliora, we've got a Sullivan, we've got Quinnell over there. Just weird names. Anyway, yeah, it does start with me, doesn't it? I've got 4 of them. All right. So much like here, after the singing, off we'd go, right? We'd go off. But unlike here, it wasn't very fun, right? And not fun at all. Now, ideally, the people who are like leading you, like in kids' church or youth or whatever, it's nice if they're kind of one life step ahead of you, just a couple of years ahead of you, like in a youth group where the kiddies can, either consciously or unconsciously, they just think, I'd like to be like, whoever when I'm a bit older, role models, right? Pretty standard role model type situation. Well, at no time did I ever think to myself, geez, I love Doris's vibe. This is, I just want to be exactly like her when I'm 75, I love that blue hair. She does a lot of knitting, has dinner at 5 o'clock. It sounds great. I'm really into it, right? So even with all this going on, right, with Doris and the gang all the week, every week they were there, like patiently trying to make it relevant for us. Like it didn't really work. Like it wasn't that relevant for us. It was like trying to talk to kids today about social media or whatever, right? You just sound stupid. You say, hey kids, how's things going on the Facebook or whatever? Or, what about that Be Real? Isn't it, I don't know, real? Right? I don't know what it is. You just sound silly, right? But funnily enough, through all of this, the basics of Christianity just kind of sunk in, right? I wasn't even aware of it. So after, this was from age 10 to 12 or whatever, then as a teen, just without even trying, I knew all the basics of Christianity. They were just like in me. Like, Jesus, just the simple stuff. Jesus dying on the cross, the Holy Spirit, like Jesus coming through the old covenant to Jesus through the new covenant. I knew the fruits of the Spirit off by heart. All right, I knew the main characters in all the basic Bible stories. I even learned a Christian party trick. All right, it's a bit lame, but I could name all the books of the Bible and say them quite quickly. Right, I can still do it, but I don't want to show off. Right? No, I'm not doing it. Oh, well, it starts with Genesis, it ends in Revelation, okay? There's a few in between. I won't do it because I haven't done it for a while and I get lost in the minor prophets, right? So I'll just embarrass myself. Obadiah, something, right? All right? So Doris and the crew, right? They must have thought to themselves quite often, did we even get through these days? Is this even worth it? Why are we bothering? I mean, the church wasn't even that big. There wasn't even that many of us. But they're like, from God's perspective, It didn't matter, right? Whether they got through or not, whether they produced the next world famous preacher or Billy Graham or whatever, or if it produced nothing is irrelevant. Because from God's perspective, he says, well done, faithful servants, for turning up every week and doing your best with what you had. Leave the results to me. God does not measure on our perceived success, but on our willingness and our obedience. All right. Story 2, okay? So a few years later, right? I'm about 14 or 15. I'm still at the same church, all right? Doris is probably still there. I don't see her very much because I'm hanging with my age group. She's probably hanging with her age group, who were probably all also called Doris, right? All right? So this church, it's quite small. So like most small churches, it has demographic gaps. And one of the demographic gaps was teenagers. So there wasn't really a youth program running at the time. But there were a few of us. There were like 4 or 5 of us who were friends. And we were like teenagers. We were in high school. So, but however, there was like an oversupply of people in their 20s for some reason. Right? This just happens in small churches, doesn't it? You get these ebbs and flows of demographics. All right. So this married couple called Paul and Lisa, right? They decided that they're going to look after us. They're going to look after us teenagers, right? They just decided, yep, there's a gap there. We're going to fill it. So they said to us, okay, Friday night, we're going to do pretty standard youth group, right? Games, snacks, bit of a Bible study, right? Nothing fancy, that's just what we're going to do, right? And so I think, well, I got nothing going on Friday, I'm in, right? That's great. I hang with my buddies who I'm friends with already. Sounds great. I didn't know Paul and Lisa very well, but I just thought, oh, well, they seem fun. All right, so every Friday, and there were about 5 or 6 of us to start, right? And it was, like I say, normal youth group. Occasionally we do, fun stuff. We go to putt-putt, go to the beach or whatever, because we were right near the beach. We go to the movies, whatever. All right, now pause this story, right? When you hear tales like this, how do they normally go, right? It'll normally go something like, the youth group started with 5 or 6, and we all sewed in, and we all prayed, and we all dedicated ourselves to the word and prayer and fasting, right? And God moved, and a year later there were 50. And then 2 years later, there were 1,000 of us. And then a revival broke out across the city, right? And now Paul and Lisa are world famous. They travel the world giving seminars on growing youth groups, right? Hooray, yeah, great success. Praise God, right? Well, this is not that at all, right? Over the 4 years, it went for about 4 years, there was a core of maybe 5 or 6, which changed a little bit. And there was maybe a maximum of 12 ever. Like when all of us brought our friends and, a few people just turned up out of nowhere or some came and went. But you know what? Paul and Lisa, they didn't really care if there was 3 of us or 100. They were just faithful, there every week, prepared stuff for us every week, just loved us. They were super patient. They walked through us individually, through our teenage problems and our insecurities and our whatever, school problems, parent troubles, etc., whatever. They were just there for us, right? Me personally, they talked me through not 1, but 2 girls breaking up with me, right? Dumping me cold, right? Right? And one of the girls was in the youth group, right? And they managed to keep us both there and friends. It was like a miracle, right? Oh, geez, I was heartbroken, but anyway. Right, there was this one girl who was there, right from the beginning, and she meets this boy, right, and he's not a Christian, but I don't know, they met at a party or something, right? But so he starts coming along because he just wants to make his girlfriend happy, and she's like, well, this is what I do on Friday nights. So he comes along, and he's quite a curious sort of fella, right? So Paul and Lisa would just spend hours with this guy explaining the gospel, answering his questions, right? Just sitting with him, like whatever he wanted or needed, they were just there. And after eventually he says to us, you know what? You got me. Christianity, I'm in. I think it's correct. I think it's true. So they won him over, right? It was so great. I mean, it was great for that girl. Now, by the way, I do not suggest that as a form of evangelism, okay? That is not a good strategy. That girl got extremely lucky, okay? So don't do that, all right? So, but these two people, they were just determined to shepherd us through our teen years and into adulthood with our faith intact, right? Now, often, I reckon Paul and Lisa must have thought, is this really worth it, right? Is this really worth it, right? These kids, it's probably going to come to nothing. There's heaps of better things we could be doing on a Friday night. But they didn't. They didn't. They were persistent and they were faithful and they were amazing, right? They saw an area that, in church, where they could be faithful and obedient to God. They did their best and they left the long-term result to God. They knew that they'd only have us for a few years, right, until we graduated school or whatever. But they didn't care. They were just like, we're going to put as much into these kids as we can, and hey, the rest is on God. Now, so after high school, we all kind of just moved away, and the whole thing came to a natural end. I changed churches, so did a couple of other people. And I never really got a chance to thank them or anything, because the older I got, the more I realised that they'd actually gone to a lot of effort and sacrificed quite a bit, right? Like, they had stacks of better things they could be doing. And, so I always felt bad about that, okay? So, here is a lovely footnote to this whole story, all right? So, fast forward 13 years later, okay? Right? I'm married by now. I've got two little babies, and my sister's getting married, right? She says, okay, I'm getting married, I'm having a destination wedding, we're all going to Vanuatu, right? I go, oh, okay, all right, we're all going to Vanuatu. So over we go, we all pack up, there's a big group of us, I don't know, like 40 of us or something. Guess who's staying at the same resort, just by incredible coincidence? Paul and Lisa. I couldn't believe it, right? I thought, I'll never see him again, and I felt real bad that I never got a chance to thank him, right? And there they are. Right, and I had lots of wedding things to do, so I couldn't catch up with them that much. But, one time I was just down on the beach and I had a lovely talk with Paul for ages. I think my son was down there as well, and I was just holding the baby. And then I bumped into Lisa in the giant pool, and we just sat in the shallow end and just talked about everything for ages. And we were even on the same plane home. It was weird. I met their kids like that because they didn't have kids when they were leading us, but they did shortly after. They met my wife and my little babies. It was just so lovely, and I was super glad that I got that kind of opportunity. But here's the thing: I'm thanking them like crazy, right? I'm like, oh, thanks so much for everything you did, and it's so great and all that. But they weren't like, oh yeah, finally someone acknowledges us. Yeah, about time, right? They weren't like that at all. They didn't really think they'd done anything particularly special, right? They just saw a need, they stepped up, and they did their best. They weren't concerned about the size or the immediate impact. They just knew that the result was long-term, it was up to God, and that God is the God of the harvest. All right? So, for us as a church, we are, and us as individuals, there are things God puts before us. The work is our part, being diligent, using wisdom, using the tools and resources we have. We make the biggest impact we can, right? We want to impact the most people we can, obviously, right? But the number is largely irrelevant, right? Like, I actually thought, I obviously knew what my message was about, and today, you all came in late today, right? Like, you must have, school holidays, everyone's a bit chilled. Right? And I thought, oh my goodness, my message is going to be tested already, right? I'm going to be talking to 10 of us, right? But again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether there's 1 or 1,000, right? It just doesn't matter from God's perspective. And the long-term results are on Him. Our efforts are never wasted. God knows what He's doing, and we can rest in that. All right, that's it.